Tuicha Tempo, an ace attorney and elite beat agent's fanfiction. Chapter 20. Phoenix didn't remember the dream until he was staring at his bedroom ceiling, his own pulse filling his ears. He had been walking into Faye & Co., copper scent and familiar dread. Something glinted in the moonlight, and he didn't recognize it until he touched plastic. He gripped the handle and lifted the mic to begin the show. But his feet moved heavy, trees loomed black. His hands clenched on nothing. Where had the mic gone? His briefcase. And Maya sobbed, just like before. Phoenix dropped his feet over the bedside, burying his face in his scrubbing hands. He'd just have to prove the nightmare wrong. The defendant's lobby thrummed with anticipation, and Stewart hardly waited for the bailiffs to retreat.
Foxx said you found Pathos?
He looked quick between Phoenix and Maya, raking at his hair, which fell immediately back into his face.
How'd that go?
Finding Pathos was putting it mildly. Phoenix glanced to Maya. Her slender fingers still worked at Pathos' briefcase. Clever on the tumbles, but apparently not clever enough.
Oh, we found him all right, and we nearly lost all of our evidence in the process. He's good, Stewart. I don't know yet how we're going to pin him, but we'll find a way.
Determination settled across Stewart's face, and he nodded.
Good morning, team.
Only effort stopped Phoenix from touching the communicator. Best not to have a repeat performance of someone noticing the earpiece. Throngs of people moved and regrouped around the lobby's edges, crisp-dressed and preoccupied. They looked unseeing enough.
No update on Pathos' location. Say hello to Jay for me.
Here, tell him yourself.
With a scooping, prying motion, if she broke agency equipment, Phoenix wasn't paying for it. She removed her comlink and held it out to Stewart in a fist.
Came out of nowhere, like magic.
Well, it sure beat finding a quarter in her ear. Stewart pressed the communicator to his ear with a flat palm.
Hey, Foxy, talk to me.
We're still sweeping. Pathos has gone off the map even with police assistance. Derek and Morris are patrolling the business district, since Pathos tried to broadcast through Nexus equipment, and he might well try again.
Stewart chewed his lip.
Comm lines?
I've added another Sigma level of enciphering. It won't stop the signal interruption, but at least we'll be sure that he's not listening. We can't afford another breach.
How you doing?
I'll be fine, Jay. We're running out of time.
I've almost got the briefcase open. There aren't many combinations left to...
And with a click and a flurry of papers, the briefcase fell open. The three of them knelt for the scattered pages and clippings.
9145. I wonder why he picked 9145.
Maybe it's his favorite number. Who knows?
Phoenix eyed papers. Every clipped article blazed with the word agent. Every picture showed a glimpse of a dark suit.
Lots of articles and pics here, but they're not all Pathos' work.
Stewart leaned on his knee, frowning at a sheet full of neat, blocky handwriting.
He's documenting agent sightings, all the tabloids and everything. Like he's looking for patterns.
He's going to all that trouble? He really hates agents that much?
Might not be hate. That's just strategy. Knowing what you're walking into. But I think we can use this too, guys.
For a crawlingly familiar moment, Phoenix looked in the newsprint margins. There wasn't a penciled white to be found, though. This was a different plan altogether. Then, as Maya gathered a final trio of papers, a silver flash underneath snatched Phoenix's attention.
What's that? No, wait, Maya, don't touch it!
She obediently yanked her hand back and peered at the pen over her knees.
What a fancy pen. Maybe it's... Oh, I get it.
Phoenix fished an evidence bag from his own disaster zone of a briefcase, gathered the pen inside, and held it up to gleam silver in the light. The vine-coiled Nexus logo blazed on the side. Without a word, Stewart turned a written sheet between his fingers. Pathos' handwriting stood in dark green rows.
It's an official Nexus pen, and an expensive-looking one, too.
He looked at the delicate nib.
And it uses green ink.
Any info on this thing, Fox?
One moment. Nexus gives a sterling silver fountain pen to valued employees at their 10-year employment mark?
Looks like silver to me.
The ink for those pens is green to represent the company and its growth commitment. Soy basting. The cartridges are custom ordered. Phoenix, this is
Just the kind of evidence we need against Pathos.
Now all they had left was to find Pathos. Final court days always felt ominous. The gallery hummed with gossip. The judge rapped his gavel sharply with purpose.
The court is now in session for the trial of Mr. Stewart Lowe.
The judge blinked, startled.
Mr. Edgeworth?
The prosecution is ready, Your Honor.
I'm sure you are.
If a death glare at everything and everyone meant readiness, Edgeworth certainly looked prepared. The judge turned to Phoenix.
And the defense?
Ready, Your Honor.
Then let us resume. As the prosecution found Mr. Sior Pathos.
Edgeworth laid a hand on his stand, like forcing himself into calm motions.
Mr. Pathos is the neighbor and longtime customer of Chef Cherry LaFlamme. This connects him to the murder victim. Since Mr. Pathos has valuable information on this case, police are currently searching for him.
We're searching too. Just buy us time, Phoenix.
He can't run forever.
Phoenix braced, and he saw nothing but Edgeworth's determination. If both of them wanted the truth, then Edgeworth would cooperate. So Phoenix pointed.
Objection!
The judge blinked.
My, that was fast.
Mr. Wright, impatience is such an ugly trait. What problem could you possibly have with the opening statement?
Here was their stalling. Phoenix would start a duel with Edgeworth, one of their knockdown, drag-out debates over tiny details. And this time, he wouldn't mind if they ended up back where they started.
Well, I'd like to know how being neighbor and customer to Chef LaFlamme connects Mr. Pathos to the murder. Could you elaborate on your theory, Mr. Edgeworth?
With pleasure. After the proceedings yesterday, Chef LaFlamme agreed to cooperate fully with police investigation. She also gave a written account of her testimony regarding Mr. Pathos.
The court accepts this into evidence.
Here, Chef LaFlamme states that the impractical layout of the building often forces Mr. Pathos to use her business as a thoroughfare. She also states that Mr. Pathos is her most loyal customer, perhaps single-handedly responsible for the survival of the business during difficult times.
Phoenix knew the answer and asked anyway.
Can we be sure this is the truth?
It was made clear to Chef LaFlamme that lying about Mr. Pathos' involvement would only implicate herself. Or have you forgotten yesterday's proceedings, Mr. Wright?
A little? Could I get a recap?
I don't think that's necessary, Mr. Wright.
It was worth a try.
All right, no recap. Phoenix nodded to the bailiff and accepted a smudged photocopy of Cherry's testimony, which contained remarkably few colorful food terms.
It's coming back to me now. However, just because Chef LaFlamme was lying doesn't mean that she's protecting Mr. Pathos. If Pathos is ruled out, Chef LaFlamme becomes more suspicious. Implicating that Pathos makes Chef LaFlamme look less suspicious, and that's exactly why we can't be sure she's telling the truth.
Phoenix, Chef LaFlamme is a fine decoy, but make sure you can get out of anything you get into.
What choice did he have? Lead the court on a wild goose chase, or let the trial stall out with no pathos and no damning reaction to the key evidence? Cherry could buy them time that... Phoenix suddenly remembered Adrian, and the sickening sureness that she was doomed. Could he do that again? Would Edgeworth recognize that desperation? No. And Phoenix tightened fists against the stand. This wasn't the same. He knew the real story this time. He had a team like shadows around him. This was a gambit.
Oh?
Yesterday's court proceedings implicated Chef LaFlamme, so she has every reason to lie, because she has nothing to lose at all. She accused the defendant even though she's not sure she's even seen him before. Why wouldn't she try to pin the crime on Pathos too?
Very well. For the sake of argument, let us assume that Chef LaFlamme's word is worth nothing.
Thanking every deity he had ever heard that Cherry wasn't present to hear this, Phoenix nodded.
Let us use only evidence. In which case, Chef LaFlamme's testimony about the running suspect is not valid, and neither is her testimony about how busy the Tuesday morning lunch rush was. Her assistant claims the same Tuesday morning scenario as Chef LaFlamme does, but as Chef LaFlamme's subordinate, his testimony cannot be trusted either.
Throwing mud at Cherry was bad enough, but shiveringly honest Barley? After all the times he had offered to help and struggle his way through confessions? A knot tightened in Phoenix's chest.
We are left with only the damaged security camera and its photo, and the leg seen in the photo doesn't match the orchard staff's chef's whites.
But if there's no proof Chef LaFlamme was busy, she could have just changed clothes.
Her assistant could have changed clothes as well.
Edgeworth shrugged, giving a lazy smile.
But we're discussing tangible evidence, Mr. Wright. Do you have any?
I have a report that the detective is on his way here as quickly as he can. He's found something at the orchard, something important. Don't dig this any deeper, Phoenix.
Hope shot through him, with dread burning after it. Gumshoe rushing to bring them a crucial piece of the puzzle? This sounded familiar. Phoenix glanced to Maya, who was pouting tenaciously and scouring the evidence reports, safe at his side. All he had to worry about was climbing out of his own freshly dug hole.
No, there's no proof that Chef LaFlamme or her assistant were the ones in that photo. We've been assuming that the person in the photo is Mr. Pathos because this fence serves as his front door.
Which is a reasonable assumption. When that door was found locked and Chef LaFlamme and Mr. Pathos were the only ones known to have keys.
But if Pathos was often forced through the orchard's basement... Realization stung Phoenix, and he slammed palms onto the stand.
That lock is a padlock, and it hangs on the outside of the door. It's impossible for someone to close the door and lock it behind them. And the inside of the orchard isn't designated for quick access anywhere. So the police arrived less than 5 minutes after this photo was taken. If the door was found locked and Mr. Pathos wasn't found on the scene, then Mr. Pathos couldn't have locked it himself.
For a moment, Edgeworth stood pensive, arms folded.
The prosecution proposes that Chef LaFlamme be summoned again to the stand. Further testimony might clarify what happened in that alley moments before the defendant's arrest.
If her previous testimony is so questionable, I agree that we should hear from Chef LaFlamme again. Does the defense have any objections?
Facing Cherry again, and prying at every snarled word. Phoenix's insides turned to water at the thought. But it looked like he had to cross-examine her again, even now that Cherry was telling the truth. Maya glanced up from the agency notes.
Don't worry, Nick. We'll see a sign.
Hopefully it would open up their eyes. Anything but this blind, desperate stalling. The comlink was silent in Phoenix's ear.
No objections.
Then this court will take a 30-minute recess while Chef LaFlamme is...
Pathos is in the courtroom.
What?
Missy has a visual. He's in the gallery. Stop the trial.
Hold it!
Pausing mid-hammer, and looking put out about it, the judge blinked.
Mr. Wright, I thought you didn't have any objections.
I've changed my mind, Your Honor.
Phoenix pointed to the ceiling, into the murmuring crowd of spectators.
Because Mr. Sior Pathos is in this very courtroom.
One shadowed figure bolted to its feet and struggled through the crowd. The murmuring rose to a roar, and the judge's gavel cracked.
Bailiffs, check the gallery, both sides. No one leaves this courtroom.
Agents are on the way.
Missy's up there?
Phoenix watched the stirring gallery crowd, imagined stern guards, and noticed his own nails biting into his palms.
She's in plain clothes. She'll be fine. But be careful, Phoenix. Maya. Pathos has been caught, but he might still be full of tricks.
Holding the court's attention, needled for the truth, with the agent who ruined him in plain sight? Pathos could be more dangerous to the agency than ever. Phoenix watched bailiffs lead a suited man out of the gallery. Pathos was cornered now. He had no choice but to put up a fight.
We could end up giving the agency away while we're proving that Pathos is guilty. We'll just have to be careful, Nick.
Phoenix glanced to Stewart, who was staring at the defendant's box floor, face unreadable past his fall of hair, and he hoped there was enough care in the world. The bailiffs retreated, and the preparation room door clicked behind Edgeworth. Even without Wright's earnest claims, Sior Pathos was not to be taken lightly. Not when he dripped boardroom pleasantness. Not with that careful openness in his posture, and not in the face of his perfectly calm arguments.
I do apologize, Mr. Edgeworth, but I didn't know the police were looking for me.
Not even when your name was mentioned in the trial? Multiple times, and as a suspect?
A raise of brows and a wider smile.
I had a moment of inspiration for my next article, just as court was coming to order. I'm afraid I was too busy writing it down to pay attention to the trial. I have the article's thesis outlined here if you'd like to see it.
This was too polished and intentional. This was an act. Edgeworth stared a challenge across the polished field of table, and Pathos smiled benignly back, drawing a notepad from his inner suit pocket. The polish and charm tingled familiar. Edgeworth didn't pretend to be numb to people like that. Not anymore.
It's not your notes that concern me, Mr. Pathos. It's the fact that when we last met, you were attempting to broadcast sensitive information, and you fled when confronted.
Sensitive information? And what might this information be? Do you have evidence that I was doing something malicious?
Edgeworth didn't. No one but Wright had evidence. Blast their trust.
I used a legitimate Nexus keycard to gain access. I did no property damage. Unless visiting a former place of employment is illegal, I fail to see the problem, Mr. Edgeworth.
His weapons were limited. The implied guilt of evading police and whatever Wright was about to pull from the Aether. There was nothing for Edgeworth to produce and slap onto his stand. Irritation raked down his nerves. Pathos had the notepad spread on the table, and he leafed leisurely through it, starting to raise his right hand and abruptly switching to his left. Edgeworth tucked that into his memory. Ambidextrous? A nervous tic? A symptom of injury? And he forced his face smooth, cool.
Very well. Then I'll need your statement, Mr. Pathos. What were you doing on the morning of the murder?
Another smile from Pathos.
I'll be glad to tell you.
To Each a Tempo was written by Pyrasaur. Ace Attorney and Elite Beat Agents are owned by Capcom and Inis, respectively. The narrator for this story is Genndy C.O.G. The voice of Phoenix Wright is Lastni. The voice of Maya Fey is Miki. The voice of Miles Edgeworth is Lazy Ace Dia. The voice of the judge is Genndy C.O.G. The voice of Agent J is also Genndy C.O.G. The voice of Agent Foxx is Galen Skibyak. The voice of Sior Pathos is Todd Wilson. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.